The moment Dorian Ames said I had stolen the project, the entire room shifted like something cracked in the air and everyone heard it at the same time. I remember the way his voice cut across the long conference table. That is our project, our intellectual work. You stole it. Apologize and leave right now. He did not raise his volume, but the cold sharpness made every investor lift their head. Papers stopped rustling. Pens froze mid-note. A deal worth tens of millions suddenly hung from a thread he had just set on fire. I sat there, my hands folded, forcing myself to breathe evenly. My name is Marin Hale, and until that morning, I thought I understood humiliation. I had been wrong. Across the table, two investors from the Hawthorne Group leaned toward each other, whispering. One of them frowned at Dorian, then at me, like he was trying to place blame before the meeting had even continued. The air grew dense, silent, waiting for my response. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. Dorian stepped closer, angling himself so the investors saw only him. We cannot move forward until she admits what she did. Let us settle this now. Before I could stand. Althea Rowan, my lawyer, rose from her chair. She was small, deliberate, composed in a way that made people pay attention without understanding why. Everyone, please stay calm, she said, and only then did the room exhale. She looked directly at Dorian. You are insisting my client stole something. Then please, prove it. Her tone was not loud. It was final. She reached into her leather case and pulled out a thick folder neatly clipped, heavy with pages that did not shake in her hands. She set it down in front of him. The sound of it hitting the table was louder than expected, and every investor's eyes followed her fingers as she slid it forward. No one moved, not even Dorian. And as he stared at that folder, the one he never expected to see, I felt something settle inside me, a clarity I had not felt in days. 3 days before this moment, I was fired and forced to apologize for something I did not do. That was where everything began. 3 days earlier, I was exactly where Vesperon Tech preferred me to be quiet, focused, tucked behind a screen while everyone else talked about innovation in meetings I was never invited to. I had spent years working on back-end infrastructure, fixing bugs at unreasonable hours, and building the one thing that still felt like mine, an automation system I had designed long before joining Vesperon, at my kitchen table in a rented apartment, using my own hardware and my own late-night stubbornness. It was the only project that had ever made me feel like I was shaping something new. That morning, I had barely logged in when 2 people from HR appeared beside my desk. Marin, we need you for a quick conversation, the taller one said. His voice sounded practiced. I followed them into a small conference room. A printed packet lay on the table. The shorter HR rep pushed it toward me. This is a disciplinary termination notice, she said. We have reason to believe you misused company intellectual property for personal gain. I stared at the packet, then at both of them. What intellectual property? You need to be specific. The man avoided my eyes. We cannot disclose internal sources. The company believes your recent prototype overlaps with Vesperon initiatives. It does not, I said, and it existed years before I joined. The woman tapped the final page. We need your signature acknowledging misconduct. It will allow us to conclude this without escalation. No, I said. My hands were steady, but my voice felt like a wire pulled tight. If you're terminating me, then do it. But I am not signing a lie. They exchanged a look relief mixed with impatience. Effective immediately, the man said. Your employment with Vesperon Tech is terminated. There was no escort, no dramatic scene. Just silence as I gathered my bag and walked toward the elevators. I was almost out the door when a junior HR assistant, someone I barely knew, hurried up beside me. She kept her voice low. Marin, be careful. They are desperate before the investor meeting. And then she was gone, leaving her warning hanging in the air like a spark that had just touched dry wood. The day after they fired me, Vesperon asked me to return for a brief clarification meeting. The email claimed it was procedural. The tone felt anything but. When I stepped into the conference room, Dorian Ames was already there, leaning back like he owned the air. A single sheet of paper sat centered on the table. "Marin," he said, smiling without warmth. "This is simple. Sign the acknowledgement, apologize for the misunderstanding, and we will close this quietly. There is no misunderstanding." I said. He pressed his fingertip on the paper. "This protects you. If you refuse, the company may have to explore legal action. That is not something you want." I scanned the form. It claimed I had misappropriated conceptual materials belonging to the Ames Flow initiative. I looked up. Ames Flow. Dorian straightened. "Yes. The system you were developing fits the strategic direction I laid out months ago. It was my concept. You expanded on it. That makes the work part of my initiative. It existed long before I joined Vesperon," I said. "You know that." His jaw flexed. "Marin, you are not listening. Sign the apology. Acknowledge you acted without proper authorization. And this ends now." My phone buzzed in my pocket. A notification flashed across the screen. Email from Dorian Ames, recalled message. But the preview line didn't vanish quickly enough. "Delete original trail. Replace with unified version." I raised my eyes to him. He looked confident, almost bored. "I am not signing this," I said. He exhaled sharply. "Then you are making a serious mistake." I walked out without answering. By the time I reached the parking lot, my hands were trembling. The cold air did nothing to steady me. That evening, I sat at my apartment table, the one where I had built every line of that system years earlier. My laptop glowed with my bank balance thin, shrinking, unforgiving. My phone buzzed with unread messages from recruiters, friends, automated bills. For a moment, I wondered if I should just sign, make the noise stop, let them take whatever they wanted. But the recalled email's preview stayed lodged in my mind, sharp as a splinter. By the next morning, fear had turned into something sharper. I needed help, real help. I spent hours calling attorney after attorney. Most declined before I finished explaining. Too close to investor season. One said, "We cannot take on Vesperon Tech." Another added, voice tight. A third whispered, "They have deep pockets." I am sorry. By noon, my chest felt hollow. Then one assistant on the other end paused and said, "Try Althea Rowan. She takes cases no one wants." When I arrived at her office, she didn't waste time. She gestured to the chair across from her. "Tell me everything." I set my bag down and pulled out everything I had, old notebooks filled with sketches, my employment contract with highlighted clauses, server logs printed out at 2 a.m, and my personal timestamps showing the prototype had existed years before Vesperon ever interviewed me. Althea didn't blink. She read silently, turning page after page with the precision of someone who had done this for decades. When she finally spoke, her voice was steady, almost cold. "They are not trying to protect intellectual property," she said. "They are trying to take yours." I felt something release in my chest. "You believe me." She lifted the contract. Clause 7, subsection B. "This is a pre-existing work exemption. Your system is legally yours." They know it. That is why they are pressuring you to sign away ownership. I swallowed hard. Dorian said he might pursue legal action. "That is bluster," Althea replied. "If they thought they had a real case, they would have filed already. Instead, they are staging meetings and rewriting narratives. That tells me they are afraid of what I asked." She folded her hands. "Of the investors discovering the truth before the deal closes." The room felt warmer suddenly, as if oxygen had returned. Althea stood. "I will represent you." Aggressively. "But we need to prepare. They will use the investor meeting to corner you. So we strike first. With evidence, not emotion. For the first time since Vesperon turned on me, I felt like I wasn't drowning. 2 nights before the investor meeting, I sat on the floor of my apartment surrounded by open folders and half-charged devices. I was digging through my old Vesperon email archive when I noticed the first gap, a missing chain where there should have been months of documentation. I leaned closer to the screen. Althea. This entire thread is gone. She took my laptop, scrolling with sharp, quick movements. These are not deletion patterns. This is selective extraction. They went into my archive, I asked. They did more than that. Althea pulled a flash drive from her case. I checked your network logs. Someone attempted remote access to your home system the night after they fired you. My stomach tightened. From where? She tapped the screen. From an address registered to Vesperon's downtown office. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed with a notification, an old email syncing from my cloud backup. I opened the preview, and the subject line blurred for a moment before snapping into focus. It was an email from Dorian, sent weeks earlier and recalled almost immediately. But the preview text had survived. Remove her name from all documentation. I handed the phone to Althea. She read it once, then again, her mouth a thin line. Good, she murmured. This proves they were already rewriting authorship long before any accusation. That system was mine, I whispered. I built it before I know, she said. And now we show them. For the next hour, she organized everything with surgical precision. Contract Clause 7, Subsection B, she said, sliding the document into place. Dated source code, original architecture logs, third-party repository timestamps showing creation years earlier. And these, she held up, printed breach logs show attempted access from Vesperon's own network. She closed the folder, the one she would later place on the conference table in front of Dorian. They never expected you to defend yourself, Althea said quietly. That is the only reason they were sloppy. Her calm certainty cut through the haze in my chest. I looked at the stack of evidence, each page a piece of the truth they had tried to bury. Althea rested her hand on the folder. This is enough. Now we prepare for the meeting. The notice arrived in Althea's inbox just after noon. She read it once, then pushed her glasses up the bridge of her nose. They want you present at the investor meeting, she said. They claim it is to close all pending internal disputes. I let out a short breath. They want to corner me again. They want a staged apology, Althea replied. They intend to parade you in front of investors and pretend the matter is resolved. It makes them look clean, and it makes you look guilty. My chest tightened. If I refuse, they will use your absence as proof that you admitted fault. She glanced at me. This is not a request. It is a trap. The word settled heavily between us. I leaned back in my chair, rubbing my palms together. My reputation. If this goes wrong, I know, Althea said softly. I worked years in this field. If they brand me a thief, no company will touch me. They will try, she answered, but truth is a louder weapon. We go in prepared. I hesitated. The money scares me too. I have maybe enough savings for 2 months. If they drag this out, they will not drag anything out, Althea said. This ends quickly once the investors see the real documentation. Her certainty steadied the room, but fear still pressed at my ribs. What if the industry believes them before they believe me? She shook her head. Marin, tomorrow is not about convincing the industry. Tomorrow is about showing Vesperon that your work is not theirs to rewrite. That night, I sat alone at my kitchen table. My old journals were stacked in front of me, sketches from years ago, messy notes about automation logic, hand-drawn flow diagrams. Every page was proof of how long I had carried this idea. My phone buzzed. Althea's voice came through, calm and clear. Get some rest. Tomorrow is not about defending yourself. It is about showing them who actually owns this system. I closed the last journal, exhaled slowly, and tried to steady the tremor in my hands as the night slipped toward morning. The investor meeting started with the kind of forced enthusiasm that always made my skin tighten. Dorian Ames stood at the head of the long conference table, gesturing at a series of slides that looked nothing like the system I had built. He spoke quickly, confidently. "This," he announced, pointing at the screen, "is the AmesFlow engine, a breakthrough in automated response architecture. AmesFlow." Hearing the stolen name again scraped against something raw inside me. An investor from the Hawthorne Group raised a hand. "Can you walk us through the original development timeline? It seems accelerated." Dorian smiled stiffly. "We have a flexible team. Innovation moves fast." Another investor leaned forward, and the author tags embedded in the prototype files. "Why do some reference an external machine signature?" Dorian's jaw twitched. "We integrate many sources internally." I felt Althea shift beside me, silent but attentive. The questions grew sharper. Who authored the core logic? Why does the earliest repository predate Vesperon ownership? Where is the original architect? "Finally," Dorian snapped. He turned toward me, eyes burning with impatience. "That is our project," he said, voice cutting through the room. "Our intellectual work. You stole it. Apologize and leave." A hush fell instantly. Chairs stilled, pens dropped. Althea rose before I could breathe. Her voice was calm, anchored. "Everyone, please stay seated." Dorian scoffed. "This is an internal matter." "Then please," she said, "prove it." Silence gathered again, heavier this time. Althea placed the thick folder at the center of the table. She opened it just enough for the investors to see the title page, "Pre-existing IP ownership documented evidence." She pushed it forward. "This contains dated source code, repository timestamps, system logs from Marin Hale's personal servers, and employment contract clauses confirming her exclusive ownership." The closest investor pulled the folder closer. His expression shifted from confusion to clarity to hard disapproval. Another investor exhaled sharply. "Dorian, is this accurate?" Dorian's face drained of color. His mouth opened, but no sound followed. Althea didn't look at him. She placed her hand on the folder, steady and certain, as the truth settled across the table like a hammer. The moment the investors reached the second page of Althea's folder, the entire meeting broke apart. An older investor closed the file and pushed his chair back. "We need to stop here," he said. "This discussion cannot continue until we verify every document in this packet." Another investor, the one who had been quiet since the beginning, spoke under his breath but loud enough for the room to hear. "This is not a dispute. This is a liability." Those words hit Vesperon's leadership like a blow. The chief operations officer, seated near the end of the table, leaned forward quickly. "Let us move to a private room," he said, his voice thin. "We can clarify details internally." Althea stepped slightly in front of me. "My client will not answer any questions without legal representation present." The chief operations officer's jaw tightened. "No one is interrogating her." "That is exactly what you attempted," Althea replied. "The meeting is paused. We stay here." Investors exchanged glances, waited, impatient. Dorian stood frozen beside the screen, one hand still hovering near the clicker he had been using. The confidence he'd worn a moment earlier drained from his posture. Sweat gathered along his hairline. His voice shook when he tried to speak. "This is being blown out of proportion," he insisted. "The documentation she brought is incomplete. It must be." "She does not understand Dorian." An investor interrupted. "Your signature is on several internal emails submitted as evidence." His mouth snapped shut. Another investor lifted a page from the folder, tapping a paragraph with 2 fingers. "This clause explicitly states her pre-existing ownership. Why was this never disclosed in your briefing?" Dorian blinked rapidly. "It must have been overlooked." "Overlooked," the investor repeated. Incredulous. The chief operations officer quickly stepped in. Let us move to a closed-door session now. Dorian, come with us. But Dorian didn't move. He didn't look capable of moving. His shoulders sagged as if something inside him had finally cracked under the weight of questions he couldn't outrun. Althea leaned toward me and whispered, "They are not worried about you. They are worried about themselves." And as the investors gathered their papers, the balance of power in the room shifted completely. By the next morning, the shock had settled over Vesperon Tech like a heavy fog. Before I even finished my first cup of coffee, an announcement went out to all major stakeholders the investor deal was paused indefinitely. No timeline, no guarantees. A few minutes later, Althea called. They launched an internal investigation at sunrise. She said, "Documents are already coming out." What kind of documents, I asked. The kind they hoped would never see daylight. Her voice sharpened. Deleted code versions. Altered author tags. Requests to remove your name from original commits, and the breach attempts traced directly to their own network. I sank into my couch, gripping the phone. So they cannot deny it anymore. They will try, she said. But the record is too loud now. By noon, the news reached me through an email forwarded by a former colleague. Dorian Ames terminated for cause. Not suspended, not reassigned, terminated. His stock options revoked, his access disabled, his carefully curated career shattered in less than a day. A second notice followed disciplinary action for the HR leaders who had handled my case. Failure to follow internal policy, the memo said. Complicity in procedural misconduct. Then came the message I never expected delivered by courier, printed on heavy paper with the Vesperon seal at the top. A formal apology. It acknowledged the false accusations. It acknowledged the mishandled termination. It acknowledged my pre-existing intellectual property in writing, signed by senior leadership. When Althea arrived at my apartment that afternoon, she carried a folder of her own. She sat across from me, tapping one page with her pen. "This is the settlement," she said. "It includes damages, legal fees, and complete, undisputed recognition of your exclusive ownership. No one at Vesperon will ever be able to claim otherwise." I read the document slowly, line by line. My name appeared in every section: the rightful owner, the original architect, the person they could not erase no matter how deeply they tried to bury the truth. Althea closed the folder gently. "It is yours now. Marin. All of it." The call came the following morning while I was still trying to convince myself the last few days had been real. I answered on the third ring, expecting another automated notice or a stray message from HR. Instead, a familiar voice spoke. "Marin Hale. This is Adrian Cole from the Hawthorne Group." I sat up straighter. "Yes, I remember you. I hope you will excuse my directness," he said. "Yesterday's meeting was revealing. We reviewed the documents your attorney provided. We also reviewed the dates on your earliest prototypes." He paused. "We are not calling to purchase your system. We want to partner with you." The word felt strange on my tongue. Partner. Yes. Under your ownership, your design, your control. Adrian's tone softened. "We believe the market is ready for what you built, and we believe in backing the right creator." For a moment, I could only grip the edge of my kitchen table. Something inside me, something that had been knotted tight for months, finally loosened. "What do you need from me?" I asked. "Just a meeting," he said. A real one this time. We spoke for several minutes. Terms were outlined, expectations clarified. When the call ended, I sat in silence, letting the steadiness settle into my bones. Later that afternoon, I walked past Vesperon's headquarters on my way to meet Adrian. The building looked the same as it always had: blue glass, metal trim, polished edges, but it no longer carried the weight it once did. I felt no bitterness, only closure. At the Hawthorne office, I signed the partnership contract under my own LLC, each letter of my name written without hesitation. They tried to silence me with an apology. I told Adrian as we shook hands. Instead, they revealed the truth. That night, at my apartment, I opened my laptop and pushed the final deployment command. The interface lit up under its rightful name, Hale Frame. My work, my ownership, my future.